Hello, Chandra. I saw you earlier. Distinguished delegates, welcome back. We'd like to get started on our afternoon session, session 4. And with that, before I announce the co-facilitators, this is to let you know that a phone was found outside meeting room C. If anyone's lost a phone, it might be the one that was found outside meeting room C. With that, I'd like to introduce you to your co-facilitators, Anastasia O'Rourke from the Carbon Containment Lab and Chandra Bhushan from iForest will now be hosting the next session. Over to you, co-facilitators.
Hi everyone, my name is Anastasia O'Rourke. It's my pleasure to co-facilitate this last session of the day today, which is on financing options for lifecycle refrigerant management. We're here going to have a panel of really excellent speakers who will share with us different experiences of financing options, everything from extended producer responsibility, the MLF of course, carbon markets, and all sorts of other ideas. So the structure of our panel this afternoon is we will first have a presentation by Bassam El-Assad. He was one of the task force members who wrote the TEEP report on LRM. That'll be about a 10-minute presentation and he'll give us some orientation to the topic. There was a briefing note produced as well. And the slides again are available on the meeting portal. Then we're going to have a quick poll using the poll in the app, and that will then help us inform the rest of the discussion. We'll then invite our panel to the stage. We've prepared some questions for them. We'll have 2 rounds of questions. Then we'll have about 30 minutes for a Q&A and discussion from the audience, and we'll do our best to keep track of who's next in line. Please raise your cards if you would like to ask a question, and please keep your questions brief so that we can hear from many people. This is a topic that came up many times this morning, as well as in the breakout sessions of how are we going to pay for all of these great activities in lifecycle refrigerant management, both upfront and then over time. So to orient us now, please, Bassam, could you give us the opening presentation? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. This is probably today the 10th or 11th, I don't know, presentation that you're listening to. I know it's been a long day, so I'm going to make it short. I'm going to make it interesting, and I'm going to present it in a loud voice to prevent the people, especially those in the back, from sleeping. So if I see anybody nodding, I'm going to stop. Well, my presentation is actually based on the findings of the task force report, but it also includes input from other assessment and studies, such as the briefing notes that was developed by the Ozone Secretariat. And in this respect, I would like to acknowledge the input of my colleague, Richie Kaur, who was crucial to the preparation of the chapter, and the Ozone Secretariat, and the moderators who also helped me with the presentation. So the presentation is in two parts. It's about cost, and it's also about the financing options, financing mechanisms. So let's start with cost. We know that cost requires substantial investments for the acquisition and the operation of the recovery, recycling, reclamation, and eventually the destruction of the equipment, both in Article 5 and in non-Article 5. We know that cost depends on the type of the refrigerant, on the scale of the operation, whether it's recovery or, let's say, destruction, on regional regulations, and on the technology used. It also depends on the fate of the recovered refrigerant, whether it's going to be reused or destroyed. So cost actually is in two parts: the capital expenditures for the acquisition of the equipment and processes, but there's also the operational or variable costs, such as handling, training, compliance, and destruction costs. And then there is what we call the opportunity cost. This is like the revenue from leak controls and refrigerant recovery compared to the revenue from installing new equipment. So it's actually the technicians are faced with the question, do I recover or do I move on to the next job? Now, some additional considerations. Considering recovery and recycling, we can say it's relatively simple and dispersed. It's all over. They are not capital intensive, but they require a large number of equipment to be sustainable, such as, let's say, recovery machines. On the other hand, equipment for reclamation and destruction is more sophisticated, it's capital intensive, and it's centralized. You want it to be in one place. Equipment costs can vary. They can be as low as $100 for a cylinder, let's say, $400 for a handheld leak detector, or more than $4 million for a commercial plasma arc facility for refrigerant destruction. And in the report, you can find a table of those costs. Now, we found that high refrigerant prices have driven more action on leak prevention, on refrigerant recovery and reuse in many parties and markets. However, high prices may also increase the risk of illegal trade and maybe stockpiling. Now, this photo of a work of art was taken at a shopping mall in Nairobi by a colleague at the last MOP. And if you see that R404A cylinder over there, we say, way to go with that cylinder. You know, it should be junk. We should be getting rid of it. Now, let's talk a little bit about financing. First, let's talk about MLF financing. The Multilateral Fund provides technical assistance for recovery and reclamation and some demonstration pilot projects. However, the MLF does not possess sufficient funds to support large-scale implementation of LRM activities. Decision 9166, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, provides a funding window for inventories and the setting of management plans. So it's not only inventories, but also management plans for those inventories. But it does not provide funding for the implementation of those plans. On the other hand, Decision 93-104 has requested the Executive Committee to consider at its 97th, which is in 2026, the establishment of a funding window supporting the implementation of the LRM plans in line with the request of the parties to the Montreal Protocol contained in Decision 2511. So there's funding for the inventories, and later there will be consideration for more funding for the plans that are coming out of these inventories. Now, the financing options. The extended producer responsibility, EPR, you've heard a lot about it in the breakout sessions. And product stewardship are policy models that assign the technical and/or financial responsibility for end-of-life equipment handling to the suppliers of the refrigerant or the equipment suppliers. Typically, these programs generate revenues to support downstream handling of refrigerants. Tax measures, either by local or national jurisdictions, include taxes on controlled substances, or they could be license fees for end users and servicing sector. Incentive measures include a requirement for recipients to conduct proper refrigerant recovery or retiring of the systems. There are various carbon financing schemes that we'll talk about in the next slide. Now, the carbon financing schemes, they include both schemes by corporate buyers and by government buyers, as you can see on the slide. Corporate buyer schemes are either through voluntary or the compliance market. So the voluntary carbon market, just as a reminder, is currently the largest platform for buying and selling carbon credits, both by credit volume and value, and consists of companies and institutions that purchase carbon credits to meet voluntary emission reduction commitments. The voluntary market supports a wide range of LRM activities with large-scale financing, including infrared leak detection, HFC reclamation, and ODS destruction. It is estimated to reach $40 million in 2030. The compliance market, which is also part of the corporate buyers, are platforms for trading of carbon credits that can be retired for regulatory compliance. The scheme has been in use in California, allowing trading credits from the destruction of ODSs. New Zealand also uses carbon credits from the export of destruction of HFCs on its emission trading scheme, known as NZETS. Under the government buyers, Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, formerly known as the Clean Development Mechanism, or CDM, outlines a framework for parties to engage in voluntary cooperation to achieve their climate objectives. Specifically, Article 6 creates 3 platforms to facilitate international climate finance, with the goal of streamlining investment from developed parties in climate change mitigation in developing parties. The Joint Credit Mechanism, JCM, is one of the mechanisms in cooperative approach under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. The mechanism has been initiated by Japan and as at April 1st, 2024, has 29 partner parties. Since its commencement in 2013, Japan supported approximately 250 projects in the partner parties. Currently, JCM has active projects in Thailand, in Vietnam, and the Philippines that recover and destroy HFCs. Credits are split between Japan and the partner countries to achieve the NDCs. Now, this is an example of the voluntary market, which has provided ongoing large-scale finance, as we said, in the LRM projects. As you can see from the project type, for instance, from the reclaimed refrigerant, it has generated 9 million credits, while from infrared leak detection, it has generated 150,000 credits. Also, it has generated credits from ODS instruction with 40 million credits, so quite an achievement. Now, let's talk about expanding the options for finance. So, meeting the needs of financing for the LRM and addressing the challenges associated with them, particularly in Article 5 countries, requires also expanding the existing mechanisms and introducing new ones. It also requires innovative financing mechanisms, including public-private partnership and leveraging private capital. And it's important to note that an integrated approach by parties can also enhance and scale up financing for LRM. So experience and scale will contribute to reducing the cost. I think we can take this as a takeaway. Now, in conclusion, I'm going to repeat what Hilde said this morning. I know it was a little bit earlier this morning, so just as a reminder, we say if a phase-out or a phase-down regime creates a shortage of refrigerant and leads to price increases, then refrigerant recovery might increase. However, if we continue the supply of newly produced refrigerant and it remains plentiful, then we need other policy and economic measures in order to phase out those refrigerants. So what is important here is establishing a data collection system by parties could inform their decision making and help assess the cost. I have an additional personal message here for you regarding the inventories that you are going to do on the waste refrigerants. Just a reminder that 2025 is the last year to request the preparation money for those inventories, for the funding. It's not only for the inventory, but for building the plans as well. And I'm going to quote from an old film. I don't know how many of you have seen it, Field of Dreams. I use the quote and I say, if you build the plans, then maybe, hopefully, financing will come. And with that, I thank you.
Please give a big hand to Bassam for this excellent presentation. He has laid the groundwork for the next poll. So we have a poll, and please open your app, and you will have a question on finance. So I hope all of you know how to operate this. In the morning we did this, and this poll was also done in many breakout sessions. So please open your app. Let me expand on the question. Which financial mechanism do you think holds the greatest potential to scale up life cycle refrigerant management in your country? You can have multiple choice here. You can choose more than one answer. Yes. Maybe another 90 seconds? Yes. Or maybe 60 seconds. Okay. I should turn it. Okay, I think so. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, the poll results are in front of you. And we have 50%, which is essentially strong policy framework with enforceable regulation at 25%, and incentives for business and industries at 24%, And then we have 15% each for awareness, capacity building, and institutional strengthening, and access to international funding. So reasonably spread out results. Now, to discuss this, and we have Bassam sitting behind us. We will have the opportunity to ask Bassam question after the panel discussion, but we have excellent group of people who are going to discuss with us the entire discussion that has happened today. I attended 2 breakout sessions today morning, and somehow every topic ended at finance. And we will have opportunity to discuss that with excellent group of people. Let me invite my panelists here. So Louis McCann from AGAS. Please give a big hand. It's a last session, but let's invite them. Yeah. Yes, please, all of you can come up now, but Louis, Laurent from Climate Life, please give a big hand. Ladies and gentlemen, let's have some energy in the room today, okay? Ana Maria from Micronesia. Ana, please. I'm going to keep repeating it, okay? Federico from MLF, please. Makoto Kato from Japan, and Kathleen O'Malley from Canada. An excellent group of people. You will have opportunity to ask questions, but before that, both the facilitator are taking the opportunity to ask them first questions, right? Okay, handing over to you, Anastasia. Oh, Alice. Okay, I missed one, sorry. Alice, welcome. Okay, so,
Wonderful. Well, it was so interesting to see those poll results. We had anticipated, actually, that more people would answer that the MLF is the number one for financing that people look towards. So it was very interesting to me that there was more than that, and certainly it underpins many programs through this protocol. So we'd like to start with you, Federico. The first question, if you could please share some lessons from the MLF experience in funding both LRM projects over the years, but also the inventories and that sort of baseline understanding of even what's possible in different countries.
Thank you very much for the invitation to participate, and thank you very much for the question. So, some key lessons from the MLF in supporting LRM and specifically the inventories. I'm going to take this a little bit separately, maybe in 3 parts. First, I'm going to focus on the recovery, recycling, and reclamation aspect of it. Maybe the first key lesson I would say is that strengthening the servicing sector in Article 5 countries is a long-term investment. For decades, the Multilateral Fund has provided support for training of technicians, for the equipment technicians need to recover and recycle refrigerants, for strengthening of training centers, technician certification schemes, regulations. These activities may not seem particularly glamorous, but they are a key foundation on which effective LRM can be built. A second lesson is there are no easy shortcuts for the effective implementation of RRR schemes. A country can't just invest in one aspect and not also invest in the others. So, for example, you can't just invest in equipment for recovery and recycling or establish a reclamation center without also having the necessary policies in place. A third lesson is proceeding in a stepwise manner builds confidence in the market for refrigerants that are reused. Numerous Article 5 countries have implemented effective recovery and recycling schemes, but have not also implemented a reclamation scheme. Conversely, I don't know of a case where a country was able to implement a reclamation scheme without also implementing recovery and recycling. So you can proceed gradually. You don't have to do it all at once, but you have to be comprehensive in how you do it. There are other important lessons on recovery and recycling and reclamation. On destruction, the experience of the multilateral fund is a little more limited. So the first part was something that we have done for a very long time. Destruction is between the 55th and the 72nd Executive Committee meeting. The Executive Committee funded a number of demonstration projects that I think were very helpful in helping Article 5 countries better understand what might be needed to undertake disposal of ODS. And there I would say a key lesson was that the difference between the perceived amount of waste ODS and economically viable opportunities for feasible destruction were pretty significant. And that's, I think, one of the key lessons that led, in fact, to the Executive Committee funding the development of the national inventories of banks. Another lesson is that without a policy framework and a strategy in the country, the refrigerant will eventually be vented because there's an effort and a cost to undertake proper destruction of refrigerant. And if I might just actually quote from one of the panelists this morning, without a sustainable business model, there's no sustainable business model in the absence of continuous flow of waste. And then on the, under decision 9166 that Bassam was referring to earlier, the Executive Committee has funded, I think right now it is about 65 projects. Those projects are currently undergoing preparation, so it's a little bit early to talk about lessons from those because we don't have those results yet. But the Executive Committee will be discussing the outcomes of those pilot projects, as well as outcomes from this workshop at its 97th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting, and clearly a comprehensive, integrated approach is something I heard very clearly from you. Makoto, if I could go to you next, please. How could you describe the life cycle refrigerant management system in Japan? We've already heard some presentations about it today, but it's been able to attract both private sector and public sector finance. Perhaps you could tell us more about how that came to be and any lessons learned from working both in public and private sector financing.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you very much for this opportunity. To respond to this question, I remember, well, there was a question from my friend from, I think, Bahrain. He actually raised the question to Kogu-san from Japan. He actually said like 4 tons, but that was finally turned to be 4,000 tons. So we, in 2022, we have recovered for like 5,423 tons. And that is basically based on our mandatory scheme, and also but the obligation is one thing, the legal framework is one thing, but at the same time, with this, we have this recovery and reclamation and also the destruction as a paid service, so that the Japanese private sector, the industries are actually, doing their business. So this is probably some success factor. As Mr. Kogu in this morning mentioned, it's not too easy to introduce like a comprehensive legal framework, especially in A5 countries. But I think it's very important that we have a clear definition of stakeholders. Who is going to do what? And then what is the procedure for life cycle refrigerant management? I think what this workshop has contributed to our better understanding of what are steps to be taken, what are necessary actions domestically and maybe internationally. And then with that clarity, well, we can talk about incentives and we can talk about like how business sector can actually do their business by providing those kind of services. The second thing I would like to stress is like to mobilize for any kind of financing scheme, whether mandatory scheme or whether EPR or carbon market or perhaps multilateral funds. Clearly, transparency is necessary. Without quantitative assessment, quantitative tracking, I think it's, for financiers' perspective, it is too risky to say, okay, let's pay for this kind of work. So domestically, we don't actually mobilize for any other kind of finance like carbon finance, but we are actually working on the tracking system. And then that is measurement, reporting, verification. Well, this is actually the prerequisite of mobilizing financing scheme. So I think this probably takes a little more time, but this is something that we can actually work on especially for our A5 country partners. So I would like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice, I'll come to you. You're from Norwegian Environmental Protection Agency. Norway has a tax refund system for refrigerant management, right? And it has had some successes. You had success in reducing emissions. How does this tax refund system complement the extended producer's responsibility policy? If you can explain to the audience how it is working out in the Norway. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting us. Yes, at current we have a tax refund scheme for HFCs and PFCs. However, we have had two approaches. For the ozone-depleting substances, we had a slightly different system, reminding more about the EPR. When we established the import control and the licensing, the import license, in the import license there was a requirement that the importer must ensure that recovered gas could be handed in for free for destruction. And this led to a reimbursable environment fee for the CFCs and the HCFCs gas that was put on the market to finance the infrastructure, the cylinder fleet, and the collection system and destruction of the ozone-depleting substances. And at that time, the Norwegian Foundation of Refrigerant Recovery was established to manage this system. And this was done by the industry and the businesses themselves. And then it is no surprise that northern countries enjoy taxes. So a tax and refund scheme for HFC and PFC were established. First, the tax in 2003. In Norway, we've had carbon tax since 1991. So it was about time for the HFCs as well. Taxes never popular. You don't win elections on introducing taxes, not even in Norway. The businesses complained that pay an import tax, but we take very good care of our gas. We maintain the equipment, we don't vent. Everybody else vents, everybody else will not look after the leakages, but we do. So the government introduced the refund. So if you take care of the gas throughout its lifetime, you can hand it in and you get a refund. The objective, of course, was to reduce emissions. And to provide some kind of compensation for those who have to pay this tax and those who do not emit. There has been established about 60 collection points throughout the country with a reverse supply system, which we've heard throughout the day, where they can hand in their used gas and pick up empty refillable cylinders. And then some challenges. I told you about introducing the tax, never very popular. And also, because the refund rate, both the tax and the refund rate is dependent on the GWP value of the gas itself. So the gas that are handed in for a refund must be analyzed, and we need to document very carefully the amounts and the type of gases and the GWP value, and that is quite costly and technically quite advanced. And another challenge is the level of refund versus the cost of collection, the cylinder fleet, the analysis, the shipment, and the destruction of the gas. So a gas with a very low GWP does not provide the same incentives for handling in the gas and reclaiming the refund, as the treatment cost is the same, whether it's a high WG global GWP or a low GWP. And another challenge might be that it's not actually very good for circularity, because now the tax is very high and the refund is quite high, so it's quite an incentive to hand in the gas for destruction and not for recycling or regeneration. So we're questioning ourselves now that does the system support circularity well enough? The success, we think that the refund has been imperative. The average over the last 5 years has been that we've destroyed between 150,000 and 200,000 ton CO2 equivalents. That will not impress most of you, but Norway is a low volume country. So actually last year the bulk import to Norway was about the same number. It was 177,000 ton CO2 equivalents. Of course, in total metric tons, it's very different, because the gases handed in for destruction now have fairly high GWP compared to the gases that are imported these days because of the time lag. So how does it complement ERP? We've had kind of a system of ERP, but we also have ERP for EE waste, as many other countries. And that actually complements the tax refund scheme very well, because our refund scheme will not be sufficient to ensure the safe disposal of, for instance, domestic refrigerators and freezers, because of the small amount of gas in those. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So from one low volume country, let's move to the another one, Anna Maria. So, Micronesia, of course, is a very low volume consumption country. What are the key challenges you face in implementing LRM? And there are large number of low volume countries.
Thank you. And I want to first thank the Secretariat for doing such an excellent job at hosting this workshop today and having us here. I think they've done a good job. We've learned quite a lot, and this is really an extraordinary opportunity. 2 years ago, I did not know what LRM was. If someone had said to me LRM, I would have thought they were talking about a computer chip or about some kind of candy. But now, 2 years later, after we took our decision as parties last year, we all know this new term of art, life cycle refrigerant management. And I think through the TEEP report and through the work in the workshop today, we're really all coming a long way together in our understanding of what this is. I will answer your question, but I will broaden a little bit, right, to why for a tiny, very low volume consuming country like Micronesia, with 100,000 population, that's an archipelago out in the Pacific Islands, why is this idea important to us? And the idea is important to us not just because it will help us implement the Montreal Protocol, but because it is a life-saving opportunity when it comes to the benefits for the ozone layer and for climate change. If all of us, every country in this room, understand and are able to implement these concepts and these technologies effectively. So for the Federated States of Micronesia, we do not have the infrastructure, we do not have yet the technical capacity, nor do we have the financial capacity to implement most of the wonderful ideas that we have been talking about, even some that have been under development and been treated by the protocol and supported by the Multilateral Fund for years, such as leak prevention and the aspects to do better installation in the servicing sector. It's still a great challenge. There's a high mountain to climb. But we believe that it's as important that we be able to implement that as it is for every single country in the room, because we are stronger as the sum of our parts than we are functioning individually. So we hope that this is just one step in the process of getting us all together towards those great climate and ozone benefits. Thank you.
Now I'd like to turn to Canada, and with Kathleen here, in talking before this panel, I learned that even very large countries and landmass size also have some struggles with getting some of their life cycle refrigerant management facilities built and operated in-house, and sometimes the gases are sent elsewhere for destruction. But what the Canadian system does have is the benefit of, I think, over 20 years experience with an extended producer responsibility scheme, which I didn't actually know about. So could you tell us a little bit more about the way it works from a financial perspective, given that this is our topic of our panel? And how is that working? Is it successful? Are there gaps? Please, Kathleen.
Thank you, and happy to be here to present about the Refrigerant Management Canada program. It's a not-for-profit corporation established in 2000 by the Heating, Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Institute of Canada and the Canadian HVAC industry, so it was designed by industry for industry. Next year we're celebrating our 25th year of operation. It's an extended producer responsibility stewardship program and is the Canadian industry solution committed to the responsible disposal of waste refrigerant and ensures that surplus halocarbon refrigerants are managed in the most environmentally responsible manner to minimize the depletion of the ozone layer and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So a key factor in the success of RMC's ability to effectively manage the collection and destruction of waste refrigerants is its networks of members and the service providers. So it's the whole collaboration and partnership. The RMC program incorporates all aspects of the HVAC industry. We've got the manufacturers who support the program by paying a levy placed on the applicable refrigerant sold. We've got the contractors who are out in the field. They're the first line out there working on the HVAC equipment and recovering the refrigerant. We've got wholesalers who are the collection points for the contractors to bring the refrigerant to. We've got our collection service providers who are responsible for collecting all the refrigerants from the wholesalers, and they weigh and test and bulk the refrigerants, and they put it into ISO tanks and get it ready for shipment by truck to the destruction facility. We have 2 collection service providers that we partner with in Canada, and then there's the destruction service provider who's responsible for ensuring the proper destruction of the refrigerant. So this network and the relationships with each of these industry sectors is the foundation of the success of the RMC program. And the entire program is structured and designed to ensure long-term success and funding. And to date, since its inception in 2000, we've destroyed 4.6 million kilograms of waste refrigerant so far. And just to talk about the financial sustainability while ensuring compliance. So Canada is highly regulated with regards to halocarbon refrigerants. All aspects of the RMC program are documented down to the collection of the individual refrigerant cylinders, their contents, all the way through to final destruction. RMC maintains strict performance standards and guidelines to ensure the program meets its regulatory mandate, including established standards for cylinders, testing, monthly tracking reports, and volumes collected, reclaimed, and destroyed. The entire process is documented to ensure efficiency and volumes are tracked for historical and trending purposes. A key factor supporting RMC's financial sustainability while ensuring compliance is the program design. The program does not receive government funding, so a model had to be designed that would be supported by industry. So the refrigerant manufacturers, importers, and reclaim companies have made a commitment to the RMC program via a levy remitter agreement. The levy is charged on the first sale of new and reclaimed HCFC refrigerants and their blends, and HFC refrigerants and their blends sold into the stationary refrigeration and air conditioning industry. The fees for the collection service providers and the destruction service providers are negotiated and reviewed annually. RMC annual reviews its short and long-term volumes. We review the revenue from the levy and the collection and destruction volumes to evaluate the financial needs of the program to ensure its long-term viability. Through this annual review, the levy is evaluated and adjusted if needed, and the RMC Board of Directors makes the final decision for a levy change. The collection service providers are audited every 2 years. RMC program goes through an annual audit every year, and there's also a contingency fund review is performed annually just to ensure that there are enough funds held in reserves in case, for whatever reason, the RMC program had to shut down. So all of these processes are in place to ensure the financial sustainability and stability while ensuring compliance.
Thank you. Thank you. Lawton. The question I have, you come from business, right? You are in this to make money, right? Okay. So tell us what has been the key enabler for you to get into this business. And I might also add, one is that you are dealing in big countries right now. Will you do business in Micronesia?
Not yet.
Just, if you can answer both of them, right? What is your enabler, and will you be interested in going to a smaller country?
Yeah. First of all, I would like to precise, because some of you can saw me this morning and this afternoon on another working group. I was on the TIP LRM task force. So for this topic, I'm for Climalife. I'm not for the LRM, so it's not what I will explain. It's only for Climalife and myself, not for the LRM. Yes. About us, we are developed. We are in a family business. So we decide to focus on the different country and different business. But my boss wanted to develop the LRM since a long time, and he developed it in Europe because we are stronger in Europe. In France, particularly, because we arrived to make a voluntary agreement with all the actors of the private sector, to the end user and to the producer, and we propose it to the French authority, and we arrived to sign an agreement. So we start to develop the LRM business, and it's more or less quite work well on it, because we put a fee on the virgin product to finance the equipment and the treatment of the waste. After about the small country, it's difficult for us to go directly to the small country with a lower capacity, because we have a family business, so we need a P&L, and we need some to have a payback of the investment. That's why to start to work with this type of country, we try to have a partnership, public and private sectors, to help us to develop and to finance the part of the equipment for this. If it's possible, we try to mutualize also with a different country. Sometimes it's better to use mutualization of the different country to the private sector to increase the capacity for the treatment of the waste. I speak about of the recovery product always for waste, but I have to precise that in France, it's the statute of the recovery product waste is not the same everywhere. So I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to turn now to Louise from AGAS. Louise, what were the key factors that motivated AGAS to integrate LRM into your business model? And perhaps you could mention any particular challenges you faced in establishing that business model, particularly in securing financing. So the two questions at the same time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you, firstly, for the opportunity to participate today. For AGAS, it wasn't so much integrating LRM. LRM really is our business model. So LRM has been our way of entering countries such as Singapore, Japan, and by and large the US. And by that I mean if it wasn't for our recovery activities and reclamation, which provides us inventory, we wouldn't be able to operate in these countries. We recognized, you need to have that full circular model then. So on top of continuing to invest in technology, we've created recovery programs and also have the destruction assets in-house and therefore create the full circular model. So today we have an LRM platform globally. And I think it's been interesting if you think of our experiences over more than 30 years when it comes to customers and the evolution with customers, because there's no getting away from the fact the majority of customers buy refrigerant based on price, which in itself, is an issue. So it's price first. There is an interest in quality, whether it's AHRI 700 specification. And then, really, over the years, there's been very little interest on the source of that refrigerant product itself. Where there was an interest and where people recognize that product is reclaimed, in fact, often that's still regarded as inferior product, and people are looking for a discount. So clearly that does not bode well for the continuing growth of LRM and for businesses to succeed with this model. It's fortunate, I think, there is a growing awareness now amongst customers of the importance of LRM. So today, for our business, when we're talking to customers, as well as the procurement people, increasingly we're seeing sustainability people interested in having this conversation. And we hope this continues, because if there isn't a differentiation between reclaim and virgin product, which favors reclaim and therefore improves the supply-demand dynamics and gives some kind of motivation for people to pay more for reclaim, we're really going to struggle to get businesses' input here on the basis it's going to be very hard to make a financial return. So, whether it's policy or other frameworks which ensure the reclaim is treated and distinguished from virgin product is a key aspect, I think, that bodes well for success. In terms of examples we could draw on there's, for example, the California R4 program, under which there is a requirement for equipment manufacturers to use a percentage of reclaimed product. And that's certainly been one structure that's worked well for a company such as us in ensuring that there is then that increased demand for reclaimed product that we can sell into. Sorry, with the second aspect of the question, you want me to turn to that one as well? Okay. Okay, all right. So we've talked about the fact that in terms of the issues that we've faced as a business, firstly, I'd go back to that one in terms of product differentiation. The majority of the world, we have very low virgin refrigerant pricing. We have very plentiful supply. So it's very hard for a company like us to be able to offer incentives to try and encourage more recovery, unless there is some kind of policy there to support this. Also, even when there is policy or legal mandates around venting, often there's a lack of enforcement, and therefore, again, there creates this limited recovery feedstock to feed into the system to create reclaimed supply. So I think policy around the requirement to use reclaimed gases would certainly be supportive. The other aspect when it comes to supporting the destruction of refrigerants end of life that's important, and one that we draw upon, is carbon markets. So we've been an active participant in both voluntary and compliance carbon markets for many years. And when it comes to the destruction side, if it wasn't for that capability to draw on carbon financing, to be honest, I don't think most of the destruction that's occurring would be happening through businesses at least. I know there has been some concerns with regards to carbon credits and scrutiny around this. I think one thing that's been helpful there is the ICVCM putting CCP or core carbon principle labeling on ODS destruction credits, which gives some more credibility, therefore, to those credits and has seen a stimulation of demand, which has helped then, with the bringing a return from those credits sold. So that's also been important to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we gave enough time to the panelists to give their answer in leisure. The next session is going to be a quick fire session. 1 minute question and 2 minutes answer. If we do that, we will be able to take 10 questions. That's it. There are 400, maybe 300 people here, so we will have a participation of 3%. I would like that participation to go up a little bit. So we will take questions and please 1 minute question and panelists quick fire, so 2 minutes answer. Right? Let me get up now. And I'm going to take 3 or 4 questions. Yeah, please raise your flag. And I have the hand raised from Kuwait. Please, I'll come back. Okay. Okay, I have, okay, Cameroon, Kuwait. I have, I'm sorry, Maldives. And the 4th one is Mozambique. Okay, so 4. Kuwait, please. 1 minute question, and you can tell us who do you want your question to be answered. You can pinpoint the panelist. Yeah, stopwatch, right. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the panelists. I think LRM is let's rescue Montreal. It's not life refrigerant management. Carbon market is something that is killing Montreal. You are destroying HFCs. Why you don't give it for Article 5 to use it, not to produce a new refrigerant? That will save. This is what we fight for 7 years under Montreal to take HFCs. Now you destroy it, take the carbon credit, give it to the people we take from HFCs to emit more because they buy this carbon and they make more emissions because their industry cannot take it out. Let's rescue Montreal. There is no carbon credit. Whatever you destroy from HFCs cannot be counted. If you are environmental, this is the call in 2010 for Kigali, and now we are giving our achievement to them to emit more. So I think let's save Montreal. Finished.
Okay. I have Cameroon here, please.
Yeah, thank you. My questions go to, I just have 2 questions. One, this one goes to Luis Macan and the neighbor. I want to know if at all your reclaimed gas is labeled, and how is it labeled? And the second question goes to Canada. I was talking about that they do collection. They have 2 collection services, and then they reclaim and they destroy. I did not hear anything about recycled. What happens to recycled aspect?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maldives?
Thank you.
Maldives, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, all the panelists, for very informative discussions. And like Anna Maria from Micronesia mentioned, yes, it is a very important topic, and it's a life-saving topic. But here, maybe in this room, we have people who has a common goal in protecting the environment. But when it comes to LRM, we also have to deal with people who is different, maybe who doesn't have the same common goal like us. But we need their cooperation. So for LVCs, LVCs, low volume consuming countries. So I was just wondering how I don't know whom to ask this question though, but maybe everybody
Please
could
ask.
answer.
I'm going to direct it.
And what are the steps to start a business on this?
Okay. Thank you. I have Mozambique. Yeah, please.
Thank you. My concern is regarding the funding for the equipment to retrofit centers. The money we're getting from the MLF is not enough to buy all those equipment for all the regions, South, Central, and North regions. My question is this: which kind of contribution the manufacturer of equipment to recover and recycling to the Montreal Protocol? I think there is a need to have a lab with them, how they can contribute to the Montreal Protocol. And in my opinion, it's reducing the price of the equipment, because sometimes we get $175,000. But when you see, after to buy the equipment, we have 2-3 units, the money is over. So I think there is a need, our implementation agents, to sit down with the manufacturers and to find out how they can contribute to the Montreal Protocol. Thank you.
Okay. So maybe you can address, or both of you can address the Maldives, okay? There are questions to you directly, okay, that you can address. And maybe Canada can also address, because the question was also in terms of, you're a big country, you have volume, how does business start in Maldives, country like Maldives? Okay, can we do that? Yeah, maybe you can start. Okay, sure.
I think I'm going to defer, because I'm not sure, I'm not in the private sector, and I honestly don't know how to answer that one. So
everyone is going to only put the onus on you to answer that. Okay, so maybe you can start. Yeah? Yeah, please. Yeah, you can start.
For us, whether it's Maldives or any other country, the starting point is thinking about the recovery aspect and ensuring there will be that sustainable, ongoing pipeline of recovered gases that we can draw upon, which then ensures the technology in terms of reclamation, destruction, and that full circular model makes sense, knowing you're going to have that ongoing feedstock of recovered gases coming back. That in itself is something that we can also support with when we're on the ground, by ensuring we're working with all aspects of industry to provide incentives to them to ensure we can get that gas recovered. So I guess beyond that, the starting point really is ensuring we understand, or there is the measurement of the installed bank, which is the starting point for understanding then what gas will be available to be recovered. But I guess for us it comes back to, there's lots of countries, and how as a business are you prioritizing which countries you work within? So that understanding, is a starting point, but again, it's also understanding policy initiatives that may be possible within that country in terms of, working with us to ensure that there is some incentive for people to use reclaimed gases. At times also, the starting point has to be an acceptance that it may be us looking to take the recovered gas and export it for processing or reclamation, and then provide that back. Because initially it's going to take time to build that scale of recovery on the ground to justify the technology cost to build that full model. So that would be my proposed.
Just one more Cameroon question. How are you labeling it? Are you labeling it differently?
Well, look, again, that's really country specific. So for us, I gave the example of the R4 program in California, whereby there's this requirement to use reclaimed gases for a percentage of OEM use. That specifically states that the product can only have a maximum of 15% virgin within that product. So in that case, absolutely, we're labeling it as reclaimed on the cylinders of 410A, and the molecules within each of these cylinders would have that maximum 15%. In other countries, depending on requirements, there'll be times that all of the gas is AHRI 700 specification, but it won't be specifically labeled.
Okay, Lauren? And maybe MLF can answer the question that came from Mozambique? Yeah? Okay.
Yes, the same for labeling. We are labeling the reclaimed product always as reclaimed product. It's not a virgin product. It's a specific topic. And about but for the treatment of the waste, there is a hierarchy of the treatment and the reuse. It's the priority of the treatment is the reuse, the recycling, and the destruction. And to give you an answer, Jakub, there is no. For us, there is no using HFCs for the carbon credit. The hierarchy of HFCs is to reclaim it, and the reclaim is not on the carbon credit. So we prioritize the reclaim and the second market of the product to define what we will do with the recovery product. And it's important to avoid all the importation or all the production of the product. And but we have to select the different country about it, and to select the waste, we have to know if there is a second market existing. That it's very, very important. It's not possible for us to have some product and no possibility after for the treatment. But to increase the recovery, we make the same of everybody, that we put some incentive on to the contractors to recover the product if the product is reclaimable or could be introduced in the voluntary market also for the destruction for CFCs.
Okay. Would you like to answer? Yeah.
Thank you very much for the question from the distinguished delegate of Mozambique. That's a tough one to answer. Maybe I'll try to answer it in two ways. So I think that the main question was, so we have limited funding. How can we make sure that the price of equipment that our technicians need can be as low as possible? And one thing I would point out is that the implementing agencies oftentimes will have agreements with suppliers precisely to try to drive down those costs as much as possible. The other example that I could think of off the top of my head, I know of one case where the Multilateral Fund has actually funded the development within an Article 5 country so that there would be local manufacturing of a recycling machine. So that was in an effort to make sure that there was a domestic capacity to, in fact, manufacture that kind of equipment. Thank you.
Okay. Now, who is going to answer to our colleague from Kuwait? Okay. Okay. Is carbon market killing Montreal Protocol?
I just wanted to specifically answer the point around HFC destruction for carbon credits. There is no methodology that exists today that is verified that would allow for the destruction of HFCs for carbon credits. So that is not happening. So I'm sorry if I'm misguided with my discussion on that. I was talking specifically about the methodologies which are in place for the destruction of legacy gases. So today we're talking about CFCs, products that are no longer used, which do still exist in some systems. And I was talking about the fact that being able to use carbon markets to therefore destroy those CFCs rather than having them vent to atmosphere, from my perspective, is a positive thing. If you look also at examples such as the California compliance market, again, focused on us being able to provide incentives to get those legacy gases back rather than them being vented for destruction, and then to be able to sell these credits for people who have a compliance emissions requirement is a positive thing. It's a big topic, I understand, and there's a lot of information out there. I would encourage anyone that's available. We're having a side event that talks about private investment that will also touch on carbon markets on Wednesday evening, and hopefully that will give us a chance to go into more detail then.
I think Makoto had a follow-up to this topic as well, and then I will take some more questions.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing your concerns. Well, I think that's quite a legitimate response. But the one thing what we would like to stress is that the baseline or business as usual scenario is in 39 gigatons of ODS and HFCs are just vented. So that we're talking about like without any actions, well, that is going to be released into the atmosphere. Of course, well, whether or not we're using carbon credits or something else, well, that's I think a policy choice. But one thing, for, as I mentioned, for the carbon crediting scheme, at least like from our perspective, so we don't really want to see something fake credit or fake reduction. But that it's something, there's no reason to buy something like that, right? Of course. So for the credibility of the credits, well, very robust, high integrity measurement reporting verification is a prerequisite. Without doing that, well, of course, I am not for the carbon credits. If you're talking about the offsetting, because for the credits, well, that is actually used to offset somebody else's emissions. That's correct. For that purpose, I think we are also thinking about like a very conservative approach. Conservative approach means like it's not one-to-one equal things. Well, it's more like carbon credits is actually counted as a very conservative way. And also the third point, this is my personal view, but there is a discussion that in the world of carbon crediting, because we see compliance mechanism, I mean, not compliance market, but compliance in terms of domestic compliance mechanism. The law is going to be introduced. Emission reduction, collection, recovery, and destruction is going to be in the mandatory actions. To make a transition for A5 countries, it's very difficult for us, for A5 countries to make immediate transition. But the carbon credits or any other scheme can be used as a supportive tool for facilitating transition. So this is one thing. Of course, well, I understand, well, still we have lots of things to discuss, well, lots of things to clarify. But one idea is that maybe carbon credits can be a part of our discussion on the table. So I would like to, respond. Thank you very much for your point.
Thank you. So we'd like to take the next round of questions. So could you please raise your hand? We had Bangladesh here. There is Georgia. I can't read who it is at the back. Kenya. Tunisia. Thank you. Let's take these four and then we'll come back to you. So Bangladesh, please.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you, Chandrabhushan, for moderating very efficiently, and the panelists. In fact, as you understand that if you want to complete the full process of LRM, it requires a huge amount of resources, and MLF is not in a position to provide this huge amount of resources. So I feel that we should try to attract the climate finance that we have been discussing around. And you know that this COP will try to decide on collectively the new global goal on climate finance, some trillions. So I feel that the panelists should shed some light on what importance we have in terms of incorporating the F gases, the contribution of black sectors in our NDCs, since we are going to submit our 2025 NDCs very soon. So this is important elements, since we are actually expecting a huge amount of resources to be provided for mitigation actions under the Paris Agreement. So we need to have some good attachment to the Paris climate finance so that the LRM can be implemented on the ground with full implementation of LRM up to the reclamation, and as well as there are some elements to be implemented for NDCs. So if we put forward the components of LRM in our NDCs, it will be conducive for us to attract the climate finance. Thank you.
Thank you. Georgia?
Thank you. Definitely there are many obstacles to establish efficient LRM system, but I would like to emphasize one specific aspect in my country at least, but I believe in other countries are the same challenges. As Luis mentioned, the first step is recovery, and one of the biggest obstacles to this is the waste legislation in my country. As soon as refrigerant is recovered from the equipment, it became automatically waste, and it's extremely difficult for a technician to maintain it as dangerous waste. So it discourages technicians to recover at all the refrigerant. This is the biggest issue, and maybe there are some good practices or experience to share how to avoid this difficulty. Thank you.
Thank you. From Tunisia next.
Thank you. Thank you for panelists for their presentation. My question is about the higher tax fees for refrigerants. My question addressed to Norway. How represents this tax in terms of percentage regarding the different type of refrigerants? It means regarding GWP of each refrigerant. Thank you.
Thank you. Senegal, there was a question. Where are they? No?
Thank you.
Okay, Kenya.
Thank you very much. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Can I continue?
Yes, please, Senegal, continue then, Kenya.
Senegal.
Apologies.
I can take the floor?
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the presentations, and thank you also for the Ozone Secretariat for this important and useful meeting. I have two questions. The first is for Bassam. I see you mentioned tax measure. If you want to promote LRM management in Article 5 countries, do you think that we put tax or incitative measure? It is the question. The second question is, does the quality of the refrigerant influence the recovery or the reclamation? Is there a level of purity to carry out the recovery and reclamation management? Thank you.
Kenya.
Thank you very much, Madam Convener, and thank you very much for the presentations. So what I really want to ask, I'm a bit confused about this funding, but then I wanted to know whether if we are to request for funding, that is mobilizing the funding for the LRM, are we considering the recovered refrigerant and then the recovered equipment? If both of them are being considered, how do you treat the funding for both? That's what I need to know. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think the first question, which was from Bangladesh initially, was about NDCs. Would any of you like to talk about how this is being either in the inventories, the national inventories, or from the, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I really congratulate for your great contribution by NTC. I think your NTC 3.0 in response to global stocktake of the last COP meeting. Yes, we're actually, in the Japanese government program, we're promoting for the inclusion of NDC with the HFC destruction, including LRM. And then we have a specific program for reflecting all this into the national greenhouse gas inventory, so that we perhaps can engage in the conversation to explore a little bit more. But I really would like to thank you for your great contribution. Thanks.
Thank you. There was a question first from Georgia about waste legislation in particular as being a barrier and how these gases are classified as waste. Does anyone have, perhaps from Norway or Canada, experience with your own waste laws and how they interact with these gases?
I can say something. In my country, the HFCs are classified as dangerous waste as well. And what I didn't manage to mention in my 2 minutes available is that not one policy solves all the questions. So we need to have several policies and regulations that sort of work towards the same aim. So in our legislation, we also have implemented the EU F-gas regulation, which provides obligations to the users or the operators of equipment to ensure that there's no leakage and to ensure that when gases are recovered and safely handled, either for recycling or reclamation or for destruction. So all these regulation work sort of towards the same aim as to prevent emissions. And also the waste regulation, our waste regulation says that you can't keep dangerous waste over a long time. So every year, if you are keeping more than 1 kilogram of dangerous waste, you have to hand it in for safe treatment. I don't know if that answers any of the questions.
Thank you. Quite an integrated approach, it sounds like. So there was a question from Senegal to Bassam. Would you like to answer that around taxes?
Yes, thank you so much for the distinguished delegate for Senegal for his 2 questions. The question about tax is that, of course, in our report, talking from a deep point of view, we mentioned that these measures are in place and that they're often accompanied by a requirement for an evidence or for like a retirement of equipment and so on. But TIP does not make a recommendation on that. I think it's better to hear it from the countries. And regarding the second question, does the quality of the recovered refrigerant affect the reclamation? Definitely it is. After the refrigerant is recovered, then there is a testing process, and the quality of the refrigerant at a certain point to which it becomes like destined for destruction. Otherwise, if it's of a certain quality according to standards, then it can be reclaimed. I hope that answers your concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, there was a question from Kenya about the MLF and what sorts of LRM activities might be available through that financing mechanism.
Thank you, and thank you very much to the distinguished delegate of Kenya for the question. I'm not sure I fully understood the question, but just to say, under the MLF, the executive committee has funded activities related to LRM for quite some time. Everything on the servicing sector side has been funded, since the CFC era. And I think I heard you specifically asking about recovery and recycling. And that is an issue that we oftentimes will fund to enable the establishment of recovery and recycling schemes, including trying to establish the necessary equipment infrastructure, the training infrastructure, so I hope I answered your question, and if I misunderstood it, please ask again.
Okay. I think we missed a question from Tunisia. If we forgot the question, really, if you can repeat the question quickly. Yeah, then I'll...
The question is about the taxes. How much the taxes in terms of percentage for 1 kilogram of refrigerant? Okay. Is regarding the GWP or the same for all type of refrigerants?
Okay. Maybe Canada can answer quickly. How much is the kind of, Norway, tax, yeah.
We're the one with the taxes, yeah.
Yeah.
So we first introduced the carbon tax So sort of the level of the tax is related to carbon dioxide with a GWP of 1. And then, so the tax in Norway now is very high. It's $107 per ton CO2 equivalent. And then you multiply this with the GWP of your refrigerant. So actually the tax for 1 kilogram of R134A is $139. And for 1 kilogram of R410A, which has an even higher GWP, the import tax is $206 for 1 kilogram. So the tax is an incentive to not introduce new equipment or new based on gases with a high GWP. Okay. Thank you.
Basam, you want to add something? Okay, it's fine. So I'm going to take few questions from non-party. If there are civil society members who would like to ask question, maybe 2 or 3. I have one hand raised there. And anyone else? Okay, I have India. India would like to ask question. So maybe I can start with India. Which one? I don't see many hands. Okay, back, please.
Thank you. I am Sonal from CEW India. So my question is, we discussed 3 broader financing mechanism, EPR, carbon tax, and carbon credits. So while EPR and carbon tax in a way essentially put the burden on the pockets of end user, while carbon markets basically brings the funds from somewhere else. But there, in the long term, there is also some uncertainty related to because carbon markets has also seen its ups and downs, and there is questions on it. So my question is there any reflection on comparative assessment of these 3 mechanisms on certain parameters, or if a country has to decide like which financing mechanism it has to adopt, or a combination of these mechanisms has to adopt, so how one can go forward, or what are the parameters one can look for? Thank you.
Sure. Any other question? This is the last session. Yeah. Please.
Hi, Dennis Clare from IECS. It's a related question, and that is in assessing the financing options for achieving environmental benefits, we should also not assess the environmental benefits, right? So if one method, such as funding from the MLF, destroys gases and they're gone forever, and another method destroys gases and then issues credits, so an equivalent amount of carbon dioxide equivalent goes into the atmosphere, then those approaches are not environmentally equivalent. So I don't think we should be addressing these options on finance as if they're environmentally equivalent.
Okay. Dennis, anyone else? The last question. The last brave person in the room. Okay. None? Okay, I have. Yeah, please. Tunisia.
To implement the LRM should have in the country a business model. The question is in the country. The question is which organism can manage very good this system, because we have financial system, technical issues, many aspects, which the organism in the country can manage all these aspects.
Okay. So there are 3 questions. I think question number 1 and 2 are very similar in a way that question number 1 is about, is there a comparative assessment of which is better? Is EPR better? Carbon credit better? Is there any ESS tax better? If anyone would like to answer that question? No? Everyone is... Okay. So the panelists are saying they're not going to hazard answering that question, right? I think the answer would be that it will depend on situation and country, what will fit. Is that a good answer? Okay. Now, Dennis' question was about why are you only looking at finance and not looking at environmental benefit? I think a lot of you will nod, right? You would like to answer that? Yeah? Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would think we would all share the fact that we're all looking for environmental benefits and better environmental outcomes. I mean, that's the fact, I'm sure, across all panelists and everyone in the room. We may have different approaches, and from a business perspective, we would say to achieve commercial outcomes will also then also enable better environmental outcomes. And then to the point around, well, which is better? We are starting from a very low base. So right now, we need more of everything. And I think this is a time, rather than thinking about what you don't like about something, is to take more of a solutions orientation and to think about the different approaches, understanding, again, there won't be a one-size-fits-all. So it's going to depend on country circumstances. In some countries, yes, it may be possible to have some kind of EPR or some kind of carbon tax, and that might be workable. In other countries, that might not be an affordable approach, and other aspects, such as carbon markets, should at least then be a consideration.
Okay. Now, the question of Tunisia, which organization is the best fit to look at LRM? Maybe all the 3 country representatives can quickly promote their organization, right? Okay. Any suggestion? Is it being, in Norway it is being implemented by environmental agency, right? The entire tax scheme.
Yeah. I was going to speak to. I think that we have heard throughout the day, especially in the morning session from the countries, that there has to be a collaboration between the authorities and the users and the associations, and so I'm afraid that it's difficult to point to one organization in the country, at least in countries I know. There has to be a collaboration of various stakeholders and the authorities. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to give you all 30 seconds each for one takeaway. Okay, one takeaway from the discussion, questions that you had from us as well as from the House. And one takeaway that you want, one message, crisp message that you want to give to everyone. Can I start with Luis? One message, 30 seconds.
So for me, private finance can and should complement public funding to accelerate LRM. It's not a case of one or the other. To stimulate more private investment, there's 2 key aspects. One, policy that differentiates reclaim from virgin product. In other words, creates that price premium and enables incentives then to be provided by industry for the recovery of gases. And 2, it's a consideration of carbon markets focused on the destruction of legacy gases, and again, being able to incentivize the recovery of these gases rather than the venting to atmosphere.
Yes. Step by step. That yes, step by step, it's my answer about resources. For example, that it's not necessary to have equipment if you have no contractors to recover, and so you have to train your technician, you have to train your contractors, you have to make a selective collection. It's very important to able to recycling or reclaim the product, and selective collection is the key for that. So training and selective collection, and you can use equipment for the treatment. And for this, partnership, private sector and public sectors, it's very important to develop and to have a good view for the future about the reclamation and the recovery.
Thank you. Chandra, psychological studies tell us that at the end of our lives, we typically do not regret the things that we did. We regret the things that we could have or should have wanted to, intended to, but did not do. Yeah? The Montreal Protocol is an extraordinary institution because it's made up of countries, but also made up of industries and organizations that are interested in this. And each one of us has this extraordinary opportunity ahead of us. We are a great institution, we are a great family, and at the end of our lives, at the end of the lifetime of ourselves, but also of our equipment, are we going to look back and say, we did everything that we could? Or are we going to look back and regret what we could have done better, but did not do because, oh, it cost too much, or it was too complicated, or we didn't have the financial ability to do it? Let us look back and be proud of what we did and not regret what we don't.
Great, I think it deserves a clap, right?
Thank you. Primarily, what we started the conversation of LRM for climate or environmental benefits. Of course, that's one of our primary objectives. But also, LRM bring us to like multiple benefits. Green job creation, or circular economy, and also we're actually talking about the sustainable development of developing countries. So this is something we should not forget. And also for LRM, if we are shifting to another type of refrigerants, like natural refrigerants, we actually need, like for ammonium or butane, propane, we really need to talk about the LRM. So that this is something about long-term thing. We're talking about, other refrigerants. Also, we're talking about waste management. So this is for your sustainable development. So we're not necessarily only talking about the very short-term things.
Okay.
Yeah, let's bring like multiple benefits to your country. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Anna Maria, for reminding us. Our takeaway would be that, from our experience, that either a tax or some kind of a fee or levy for introducing the refrigerants on the market in the first place is a good starting point for financing infrastructure and systems needed for safe collection and destruction. And in addition, in our experience, the tax provides also incentive for not using high GWP refrigerants in the first place, and then perhaps use natural refrigerants instead. Thank you.
So maybe one key takeaway is it is unlikely that there is a one-size-fits-all solution for all Article 5 countries. A mechanism to scale up funding should take into account the different national circumstances across all Article 5 countries. And in terms of maybe a key challenge to keep in mind, I would say sustainability. And here, it's very important to have the necessary policies and regulations to implement those and enforce those. And just to note that there are a variety of financial mechanisms and funding modalities that could be considered to support LRM. We heard just earlier here, this is a long-term investment. And in order to make the long-term investments needed to ensure the sustainable implementation of LRM, funding support for Article 5 countries should be predictable.
Kathleen?
So RMC, we do sell carbon offsets to help fund our program. It's not, the levy is what funds the program, but the offsets help offset the cost of the bottom line. So I would say the one takeaway is like collaboration and partnership with the whole industry. Like we've got relationships with, as I mentioned, the manufacturers, wholesalers, contractors, collection service providers, destruction, and to sell your carbon offsets takes a lot of data collection. So all of these partners are aware of what we're doing, and we partner with them to get the data to submit for carbon offsets. So it's a partnership.
Thank you very much. Before I hand it over to my co-facilitator, I just want to say that we are living in a new reality, the reality of climate crisis. And even a fraction of a degree will matter, because it is about saving lives, livelihoods, and economy. That's what we all are here for. That's what the discussion will be in Baku in next week. But we will have to make sure that It is feasible. It is something that can be done, implemented well in all the countries. And the answer that I have got from this group is there is no one fit solution, right? And then, using your word, no regrets, right? Thank you.
Great. Well, just to wrap up for today, firstly, I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists, to our presenter, Bassam, to my co-facilitator, and to you all for your excellent questions and engagement on this topic. I will just give a few thoughts on some key takeaways that I heard. I don't want to repeat all the wonderful statements and themes that we've already heard, but just one or two things. One is that, just to bring it back to financing, I think we can all agree that more funding is needed to do more sooner and at a much higher level to really address the climate issue that we are facing. But that it is a very tangible set of projects that we can imagine here for life cycle refrigerant management, and that it's actually within reach. So another theme that I heard was that, you know, diverse and innovative financing mechanisms can layer upon each other, that one, not the other, perhaps both, many different systems, and that not one size fits all. I think we heard mixed feelings about carbon markets and the role that they play. So clearly we need to study this some more and really understand what is at stake and some of the different trade-offs that are potentially, you know, have been expressed here in terms of their absolute environmental benefit and cost. And I would say that perhaps all of the different financial mechanisms need to be looked at through the same lens and really think about opportunity cost as well as financing and how can we stimulate this to be a self-sustaining system so that we don't need to go back again and again and have these difficult discussions, but so that the system starts to take care of itself in a more circular economy fashion. So with that in mind, I think together there's clearly a need to gather data on, and we've heard so many great anecdotes, stories, case studies today throughout the day. I know that there are many convening organizations who are great at sharing information and learning from each other. So this is a good open community. So please turn to each other, look to some great guidance that's already out there, and share your own stories, both of successes and failures, and things that you wish would have gone otherwise, because that's how we can all learn and speed this up together. So with that, I think I'd just like to close and say there will be a reception now, and we can continue the discussions. And again, thank you very much for your participation today, and thank you to our panel.
Thank you very much, co-facilitators, Chandra and Anastasia, and the panelists. If you'd like to go back to your seats, you may do so. With that, distinguished delegates, we've come to the closing session. But before we wrap up, please allow me to run two more very quick, short polls. So if you could please get your mobile phones out again. And in view of having participated in the workshop throughout the day, we would just like to ask you, what does LRM mean to you now? So hopefully the poll has been activated. There we go. And if technology is on our side, we should be able to compare that to the inputs from this morning. So sustainability still seems to be one of the key inputs there. And apologies, actually my eyesight is not that great either. I can't see that far. Oh, but it's behind me. Collaboration, which wasn't there this morning. That's good to see. Circularity, systems approach. Excellent. If you can continue with that, we will then finalize those two. I see there are still some inputs coming through. But the clear message is collaboration and sustainability. And systems output. Or systems approach, yeah. And I think I can't see any more inputs. There are a few more coming through. Okay, then the final poll question. What are the key takeaways from today's workshop? Key takeaways, key messages, thoughts, feedback. We'd love to know. Stop talking and start doing something. It can be done, just do it. More training and certification. Do please put in as many answers as you like. Recovery, very difficult. Mentimeter that we're using has a capability, an AI capability, that once all the messages are in, it will start grouping them in themes, either keywords or key themes. So we can also then see what some of the trending takeaway messages and feedback is. Okay, a few more messages and inputs coming in. I think if we can do the analysis, see what some of the common themes are. Training, recovery, collaboration, financing, technology, scarcity. Excellent. Thank you very much for your participation, active participation in the polls. With that, I'd like to thank you all for your active participation throughout the day. I'd also like to thank all of our experts, our co-facilitators. The summary of this workshop will be collated and put together ready for the preparatory segment. All of the presentations, documents, as you know, are available on our workshop meeting portal, and if any of you had any questions that are unanswered or would like to reach out to any of the experts, please let us know and we can help you with the contacts. With that, thank you very much, and there is a reception outside for your indulgence, and enjoy.